you. I'm Deputy Field Director here in New Hampshire, right here in Manchester, and I want to tell you why I'm fighting to get Bernie Sanders in the White House. So, I had skin cancer, and it was painful, it was scary, it was expensive, and with the job that I had, I felt like if I didn't really push myself, I could lose that job, so I overworked myself, and then that left me with chronic pain and chronic problems, and it didn't have to be that way. And Senator Sanders has a lot of platforms that could have really made the whole situation so much better. First of all, he makes it a lot easier to unionize, and labor, yeah. And we actually, Sanders has the first union in presidential campaign history. It would have made my life a lot easier had we had Medicare for all. And then skin cancer, I'm super pale, maybe it was inevitable, but the ozone, we can go after that if we had better climate change protections like the Green New Deal. So you see why it's so important to get him in there. The thing is, he can't do it alone. Ooh. Yeah, he can't do it alone. So remember that this campaign isn't funded by billionaires or corporate interests. It's funded by people like you and me with our smaller dollar donations, those $27 donations or anything you can contribute. So I'd really love it if you could all pull out your smartphones right now and then text donate to 67760. I'll say that again. Text donate to 67760. Give anything you can. $27 would be great. And then while you have your phones out, check out your browser, and we made a special link just for this weekend so you can participate. Open it up to bsanders.us/New Hampshire, and then so we're going to be canvassing. That means going door to door in this community, talking to your friends and your neighbors. We also have tons of phone banks. We have one tomorrow night here in Manchester. Join us for this one and all the phone banks we have coming up, and all of the barnstorms too. We need to be in this together to make this happen. We got to do this together. This is a community effort. It's grassroots. We got to do it together. And lastly, if you haven't checked out our merch table outside there, all of that, 100% of those proceeds go to the campaign, and they go to getting Bernie Sanders elected in the White House. Yes, it is. So, is everyone ready to feel the burn? I want y'all to have fun tonight and feel the burn.
And now, everyone, please welcome to the stage local officer and activist for the American Postal Workers Union, Janice Kelby.
Hi, everybody. I'm so honored to be here today to welcome you to the Manchester Rally for Bernie, a man I truly believe works for all of us. I'm Janice Kelby. I am a union representative, a community activist, a mother, and a grandmother. I live in Hooksett, New Hampshire, and after moving here from Maryland 26 years ago, I learned about New Hampshire's unique opportunity to learn about the presidential candidates. So I started to pay attention. You might have noticed that many of the issues that they're talking about in this campaign were first brought to light by Bernie Sanders. He's guided, He's clearly guided by the voices and the needs of ordinary people, not the voices and the power of the billionaire class and their lobbyists. In 2020, we must elect a candidate who has the values that most closely match our own, somebody with a solid plan to make those values become a reality. I sometimes hear people talk nervously about redistribution of wealth. Well, guess what? It's not a new idea. It's already happening now, except it's all the wealth is going the wrong way. While the advantages for the super wealthy are constantly increasing, the rest of us are in a growing group of people who are struggling to help our kids to have the opportunity for a higher education, and we're fearing for our own ability to be able to afford retirement. I can tell you that firsthand. Bernie has long been a forceful advocate for working people, fighting for collective bargaining. You just heard about how his own workers here are collective bargaining. And he fights for real family values, like paid family medical leave, a living wage, and he rejects unfair trade deals that favor special interests. His focus has always been on creating opportunities that lift the middle class and those who live in poverty. In 2012, the Postal Service announced plans to do massive plant closings and to destroy the service. And Bernie held a town hall meeting where nearly 400 workers, community residents, veterans, and area business people came together in a really crowded Vermont school to talk about the impact of these changes. Bernie left that meeting on a mission to maintain a thriving postal service, and he has never let up, defending the Postal Service with the same passion as he has always shown for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Why? Because he knows that it's not only a vital service to the economy and to communities, he understands that the Postal Service has provided a path to the middle class for so many workers, including veterans and thousands, tens of thousands of minorities throughout the country. As a leader who listens to the people and cares about their needs, he has explored innovative ideas such as postal banking to reinvigorate the Postal Service while filling an existing need that exists in many communities. We cannot move forward with the inequality that exists today. Bernie will not rest until Citizens United is just a bad memory. Higher education and decent medical care are no longer luxuries. Veterans are no longer homeless. Workers earn decent wages, and all people are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of race, gender, or sexual orientation. I believe that with hard work, together we can elect the person who has always walked the walk, who's ready to roll up their sleeves and walk with Bernie.
All right, and next up, please give a big welcome to another incredible local activist, an organizer with Occupy New Hampshire Seacoast, David Holt.
Hi, I'm David Holt. I'm a native New Hampshireite, an activist, and I come from a family of Republican farmers. The reason that there's a D after my name is that when it came time to register to vote, I looked at the values the parties espoused, and I chose the Democrats because they spoke about equality, fairness, and working for working people, the majority of the country, or the 99%. As I got more involved and started to become an activist and to follow politics, I kept hearing about one man who was either sponsoring legislation or speaking about the issues I cared about and about what the 99% cared about. Can you guess who that was? Yes, that was Bernie Sanders. I believe that government exists to create rules and systems to ensure that no one is taken advantage of. What it's become is a tool to maintain the status quo. In our case, a system to reallocate wealth from the majority to the elite 1% or the 0.01%. I think Bernie's one of the few politicians that doesn't only know this, but realizes it's wrong. We only have 12 years to reverse the damage of climate change, or none of the other issues are ever even going to matter. That's why this election is critical. The establishment wants to take the middle of the road to address the climate change crisis, and that's unacceptable. They say they can't disrupt the economy, and they won't legislate against the corporate donors that contribute to their campaigns. Woo! But Bernie is the godfather of the Green New Deal, and yes, and he's championed campaign finance reform from long before it was ever popular. The current establishment wants a healthcare system that doesn't cover millions of people, and it costs us 3 times what other countries pay. So also corporate healthcare can continue to reallocate wealth to the top 1%. But Bernie's promoting Medicare for all. Woo! Bernie is a champion of the 99% and everything that our society needs to function, with the intent to make a system fair to all of us. I've heard many people call Bernie a socialist as if it were a bad thing, even among the Democrats. But what is socialism? It's the recognition that we are a society and we need a system that's fair to all of us. All right, it's up to all of us here to ensure that this champion becomes the next president of the United States. So I want you to raise the roof. It's my honor and privilege to introduce Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you all. This is a great turnout. I love you too. Thank you all for coming out on this miserable night. And let me begin by thanking Charles Prue, a one-man band. Let me thank Janice Kelby for her beautiful remarks. And thank David Holt for his introduction. I am here tonight to ask you to help save our nation. Yes, sir. I am here tonight to ask you to be part of a political revolution. A revolution that is not just going to win the Democratic nomination, and we're going to do that. A revolution that is not only going to defeat the worst president in American history, Donald Trump, but a political revolution which, with your help, is going to transform this country. And create finally an economy, a government, and an energy system which works for all of us, not just the 1%. And I want to tell you that the underlying principles of our campaign and our government will be based on the principles of justice. And that means economic justice. It means social justice. It means racial justice. And it means environmental justice. Now, making a political revolution is not easy. It is not easy. And the message of our campaign is us, not me. Now, I appreciate very much Bernie. I have an ego. I'm a member of the U.S. Senate. All big egos. I've got it. But I wish I could stand here in front of you and say, hey, vote for me, and all of the problems are going to be solved. Ain't going to happen that way. It never happens that way. And I think one of the reasons that people in our country and all over the world get discouraged by the political process in democracy is that candidates get up there, and often they are honest and well-intentioned. And what they say is, vote for me, and I'm going to do A and B and C and D. People vote for them, but A, B, C, and D doesn't happen. And the reason is not necessarily that those candidates were dishonest or lying to the people. The reason is that no president, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else, can do it alone. And that is what the political revolution is about. I'm not going to deny that a president has a lot of power. He or she does. But at the end of the day, if we want to address the real crises facing this country, millions of people from coast to coast are going to have to stand up and look around them and say, you know what, the status quo is not working. We want change. We want real change. What are we talking about? So, what are we talking about when we talk about real change? For a start, we have got to address an issue that you will not see on television, and that very few. It is one of the very most important issues facing our country and, in fact, the world, and that is the issue of income and wealth for a dozen years, and that issue will not come up. And you have to ask yourself why that is the case. But here is the reality. You live in the richest country in the history of the world, and 500,000 people, including many veterans, are sleeping out on the streets of America tonight. You live in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and I just talked a few hours ago in Londonderry to some folks. We had a rally there, and two women stood up. And one woman said, I am 67 years of age, and I am working 3 jobs. Another woman said, I think she was 68, working 4 jobs. All over this country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, working people are forced to work 2 or 3 jobs to take care of their families. Half of the people in this country are living paycheck to paycheck. Do you know what that means, living paycheck to paycheck? You do know what it means, because many of you are living paycheck to paycheck. And what that means, think about what it means. What it means is that if your car breaks down and you can't afford the $500 you need to repair it, you can't get to work. And if you can't get to work, you lose your job and your income. And if you lose your job and your income, you can't feed your kids. That's living paycheck to paycheck. Living paycheck to paycheck is being scared to death that the problem you're feeling in your stomach or your heart or in your breast may be a serious illness, but you can't afford to go to the doctor. And if you end up in the hospital with a $50,000 bill, you have no idea in the world how you're going to pay that bill. Living paycheck to paycheck means that you are a hard-working couple trying to raise your kids, and you want your kids to go to college, but you damn well cannot afford the tens and tens of thousands of dollars it takes to send your kid to college. We need an economy that works for all of us, and we are going to address this disgraceful and obscene level of income and wealth inequality in America. In America today, now, you don't hear this very often, but I will tell you this. In America today, you got three families, 1, 2, 3 families who own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. Now, the Wall Street Journal and the other corporate media may not think that that is an outrage or an obscenity, but I do. And today in America, you have here in New Hampshire and certainly in Vermont and in most parts of this country, people working 2 or 3 jobs to put food on the table. I'll never forget, I was at a grocery store in Burlington, Vermont, where I live, and a woman came up to me and she said, you know, Bernie, my husband and I, we have 1 kid, we would like to have more kids, but we don't think we can be the parents that we want to be because I'm working 2 jobs and he's working 3 jobs and we just can't raise kids the way we want them. And that's going on all over the United States of America. Meanwhile, 49% of all new income is going to the top 1%. And I think the working class of this country is getting sick and tired of working longer hours for lower wages, and almost all of the wealth and income is going to the top 1%. People are tired. People are tired of seeing CEOs making 300 times what they make working for a large corporation. They're tired of large, profitable corporations shutting down in America and moving to low-wage countries abroad. They're tired of their employers telling them that they're going to have to pay more for health care. Thank you. Well, as it happens, while we're on that point, it turns out that next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, I'm going to be in Bentonville, Arkansas. Anybody know what exists in Bentonville? That is the headquarters of Walmart. And I was invited to go there by a group of workers who own some stock in the company, and next week there'll be the National Board of Directors, their annual Board of Directors meeting. And what the workers want is a seat at the table, and they also believe that the wealthiest family in the United States of America, a family worth something like $170 billion, should be paying their employees a living wage. When we talk about a corrupt and rigged economy, let me give you the story about Walmart. It's not just that you got the wealthiest family in America paying their workers starvation wages, but for many of those workers, their wages are so low they have to go on food stamps, they have to go on Medicaid, they have to go into public housing. Who is paying for that? Yeah, the working people of this country, the middle class, is paying more in taxes in order to subsidize the wealthiest family in this country. That is absurd. And my message to the Walton family will be, we are tired of subsidizing you. Pay your workers a living wage. But it's not just Walmart. I mean, that's just one of the outrages that exist. Let me give you an example about Amazon. Amazon is owned by the wealthiest individual in this country. Jeff Bezos is worth about $114 billion. Wealthiest individual. He's doing just fine. And a year or so ago, 2 years, my office heard from a lot of Amazon workers. And they were saying, you know, we are working for starvation wages. The working conditions are abysmal in the warehouses. Can you help us? Can you do something? Well, we did the best that we could, and the end result was that we forced Amazon to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, that's a good thing. But that's only half of the story. That's half of the story. Because when you deal with Amazon, then you got another half. Amazon made something like $11 billion in profits last year. Anybody here know how much they paid in federal income tax? God, you guys know a lot. All right. So here is the absurdity. This is the economy that we are living under. You got the wealthiest family in America, the Waltons, paying starvation wages and having you subsidize them. You got the wealthiest individual in this country owning a corporation that made $11 billion in profits, and that corporation pays nothing in federal income tax. That is called a corrupt, rigged system, and that's the system we're going to change. Now, that rigged economy rests on the foundations of a corrupt political system. So what do I mean by a corrupt political system? In New England, we have a history of town meetings. We have a history of local grassroots democracy. We have a history of believing in one person, one vote. You get a vote, and you get a vote, and you get a vote, and majority wins. Our history is not that of billionaires buying elections. And that is how Amazon ends up paying no federal income taxes. It's why Walmart can pay starvation wages, because you got a Congress that in many respects is bought and owned by the wealthiest people in this country. And that is what the political revolution is about. But to deal with the political revolution, we have to change the electoral system in this country, and that means together we are going to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. It means we are going to end excessive and crazy gerrymandering all over this country. And it means that we will end Republican governors from all over this country engaging in voter suppression. And let me repeat to you what I have said all over this country, because this is something to me that is, I feel in my guts. As somebody who has run for office many, many times in Vermont, you know, I've lost some elections and I've won elections, mostly one, thank God, but I've lost some too. But it has never occurred to me, honest to God, nor I think to most candidates, to figure out how you can deny people the right to vote because they might vote against you. You understand what I'm saying? All right. So I say to Republican governors all over this country, if you don't have the guts to participate in free, fair, and open elections, get the hell out of politics and get another job. Now, I wish that I could tell you that this voter suppression was just taking place in Georgia or in the Deep South, where they have a history of racist laws trying to make it hard for African Americans to vote. I wish I could tell you that that's the only part of the country where voter suppression is taking place. Unfortunately, that is not the case, because voter suppression is taking place right here in the great state of New Hampshire. And as you know, last year, this Republican-controlled legislature then passed legislation deliberately and carefully scripted, carefully written, to make it harder for young people to vote in the state of New Hampshire. Now, I kind of think that the young people are the future of this country. I kind of think that we want to get more and more young people engaged in the political process. So I want to applaud the Democrats here in New Hampshire, in the House and the Senate, for working on legislation that would essentially repeal the voter suppression efforts of the Republicans last year. And I urge Governor Sununu not to veto that legislation. Now, we are going to win this nomination, and we're going to win the election because we are talking about the real issues impacting the American people. And I want to just touch on some that in recent weeks have kind of risen to the top. I was in Alabama a couple of weeks ago. And in Alabama, as you all know, and in Georgia and other states as well, the legislatures there and the governors are working overtime to deny women in this country their constitutional right to control their own bodies. Now, I have been asked on occasion, do I have any litmus tests for people that I would nominate to the U.S. Supreme Court? And let me tell you, I do. I will never nominate anyone to the Supreme Court who will not defend a woman's right to control her own body. And who will not vigorously defend Roe versus Wade. And let me tell you another issue which is on the front pages, which makes me very nervous. Now, in recent weeks, I have been criticized because of my foreign policy record. So let me briefly go over that, because you'll hear this criticism. When I was a young man, it is true that along with Dr. Martin Luther King and millions of other people, I marched and I demonstrated against the war in Vietnam. And I know what that war did. And it's a little bit emotional to me because that was my generation. I know what it did to my generation of close to 60,000 brave young men getting killed in Vietnam, millions of Vietnamese getting killed, young men coming back from that war on drugs, never getting their feet on the ground, and some of them are sleeping out on the streets tonight. I make no apologies for opposing that war, and I make no apologies to anyone for helping to lead the effort against the disastrous war in Iraq when I was in the House. Now, people can criticize me all that they want, but when I was in the House, I knew, I could see that Dick Cheney was lying. I could see that John Bolton was lying, and that the entire administration of Bush was lying. So I make no apologies for having not only voted against that war, but helped lead the effort. And I'm just sorry that we didn't succeed, because the result was a disaster. And let me also tell you, I make no apologies in recent months for doing everything that I can to get the U.S. out of the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen. You know, every day Trump is ranting and raving about Iran, and let me tell you, Iran is not the kind of government we like. They have many, many serious flaws. But let's say a word about the despotic, murderous regime in Saudi Arabia. This is a regime that does not tolerate at all any form of dissent, opposed vigorously to any form of democracy, murdered in cold blood a Saudi dissident in their consulate in Turkey, and now is dragging the United States into a civil war in Yemen, which is now the worst humanitarian disaster on earth. The UN tells us that some 200,000 people, men, women, and children, may be dead at the end of this year if we do not stop that war and rebuild their economy. So I make no apologies to anybody for helping to lead the effort in the Senate, working with our friends in the House. For the first time in 45 years, since the passage of the War Powers Act, we got majority votes in the House and Senate to end an unconstitutional, unauthorized war. And I damn well will apologize to nobody for doing everything that I can to stop John Bolton and Trump and his administration from getting us into a war with Iran. And if you think the war in Iraq was a disaster, which it certainly was, a war with Iran would be even worse. It would result, in my view, in never-ending perpetual war. It would be an Orwellian nightmare. It would be wars that your kids and your grandchildren would be part of. So we need a foreign policy which does everything humanly possible to solve international conflict through diplomacy, not war. And I know how easy it is for politicians to go before the American people and say, we are going to be tough, and we're going to go to war, and we're going to bomb the hell out of this group or that group. But let me tell you, It is not the sons and daughters of billionaires who will be fighting in that war. It's working class kids. Now, 4 years ago when I came to New Hampshire, we had a set of ideas that the political establishment and the media establishment said were much too radical, much too extreme for the American people. Well, we came to Iowa, and we left Iowa winning 49.9% of the vote, and then we came to New Hampshire. And we won 60% of the vote. So I am here tonight not just to thank you for the support you gave me in 2016, but to say something more. Is that your support, not just for me, but for the ideas that we worked on together, that support and those ideas have changed the entire political debate in the United States of America. Four years ago, we came here and we said that if you work 40 hours a week in America, you should not be living in poverty, that we should raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And I was told that that was a crazy idea because you can't more than double the federal minimum wage. Now it's 7.25. Can't be done, too radical. Well, the people of New Hampshire did not think that idea was too radical, and since then, 7 states in America have passed legislation to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And within the next couple of months, the U.S. House of Representatives will do exactly that thing. Four years ago, I came to New Hampshire and I said to you that I believe that health care is a right, not a privilege. And I was told that nobody in America would support the idea. It was communistic, socialistic, it was much too radical. Well, last poll that I saw, 70% of the American people support a Medicare for all single-payer program. And the American people are sick and tired of a dysfunctional healthcare system which is designed to make insurance companies richer and pay exorbitant compensation benefits to their CEOs. The American people are tired of 34 million people having no health insurance and millions more, including many of you, being underinsured with high deductibles and high co-payments. So I say to you tonight that if Canada can provide health care to all of their people at 50% of the cost per capita, if Germany, if Scandinavia, if France, if the United Kingdom, if every other major country on earth can guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child in their country, do not tell me that the United States of America cannot do the same. Four years ago, came to New Hampshire and I said it is time that we take on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry. Now, one of the problems we have in Washington, D.C., it's really hard to figure out who are greedier and more dishonest, whether it's Wall Street or the pharmaceutical industry. That's a hard choice to make. I don't know. But I will tell you that the pharmaceutical industry is ripping off the American people in an extremely ugly way. Last year, I want you to hear this. Last year, the top 10 drug companies in America made $69 billion in profit. And they made that profit because you are being charged the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and the result is that 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford the medicine their doctors prescribe. So tonight we say to the pharmaceutical industry, you will stop ripping off the American people. We are going to cut the cost of prescription drugs in this country in half. 50% reduction. Is that a radical idea? No, it's not, because if we do it, all we're doing is having the same prices as countries all over the world. 4 years ago, I came to New Hampshire and I said, maybe it's time we created 15 million good-paying jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. No longer a radical idea. 4 years ago, I came to New Hampshire and I said that instead of cutting Social Security, we're going to expand and extend Social Security. Four years ago, I came to New Hampshire and I said that in this moment in American history, free public education should not be from kindergarten through the 12th grade. That if we want people to be able to make it into the middle class, we have got to make public colleges and universities tuition-free. Four years ago, that was a radical idea. That is not a radical idea today. That is what states and cities all over this country are beginning to do. 4 years ago, I raised an issue that had not been talked about very, very much, and that is the absurdity of millions of people in this country forced to pay outrageous levels of student debt. How many people in this room are dealing with student debt? Okay? And some of you are paying very high interest rates on that debt. Well, we got an idea that we are going to implement, and that is we have introduced legislation for a transaction fee on Wall Street speculation. And that tax on Wall Street would bring in enough money to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and very substantially reduce student debt in this country. Four years ago, I came to New Hampshire and I said that we have a major, major crisis in terms of climate change. All of you know that just a number of months ago, the leading scientists from all over the world told us, this is really scary, but they told us that we have less than 12 years to get our act together and to transform our energy system, or else there will be irreparable harm done to not only our country, but the entire world. So tonight I say to the fossil fuel industry, whether you like it or not, we are going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And by the way, as this young man is pointing out, a Green New Deal will also create millions of decent-paying jobs while we save the planet. And when I talk about us, not me, let's just talk about the fossil fuel industry. It is really, it's hard to come up with a word, honestly. I don't know what the word is. To talk about an industry that knows that what they are producing is destroying this planet, but while they pursue their short-term profits, they are willing to sacrifice the future for our children and our grandchildren. How disgusting is that? They remind me very much of the tobacco industry. Are some of you familiar with the history of the tobacco industry? Where they lied and lied and lied. They went before Congress and they raised their arms and said, oh, we don't believe that our product causes cancer or heart disease. They knew it. They knew what tobacco was doing, and they lied and they lied. My father smoked 2 packs of cigarettes every day, and he died young. And that's true for millions of other people. And that is exactly what is happening right now. So we say to the fossil fuel industry, we are sick and tired of your lies. We will save this planet. We will transform our energy system. Let me say this. As President of the United States, what I will attempt to do, because climate change is not just an American issue. You all know that it's a global issue. No one country could do it alone. And what my vision is, and I know this sounds a little utopian and maybe, you know, I'm dreaming a little bit here, but this is what I would like to see happen, is instead of spending something like $1.5 trillion every year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, that the countries of the world, whether it's Russia, China, India, Latin America, Africa, the whole world, come together in common mission to combat climate change and save this planet for future generations. Four years ago, I came before you and I told you that we have a broken and racist criminal justice system. And I'm happy to tell you that over the last 4 years, there have been a lot of great people all over the country doing great work, and progress is being made. And here is what I believe. I believe we need real criminal justice reform. And that means instead of spending $80 billion a year to lock up our fellow Americans, we should be investing billions of dollars in our young people, making sure they have the jobs and the education they need to go out into the world. We should spend money on jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. And 4 years ago, I came to New Hampshire and I said that we have got to end this disastrous war on drugs. And that we had to legalize or at least decriminalize possession of marijuana. Now, 4 years ago, that was a radical idea. It ain't such a radical idea today because state after state after state is decriminalizing or legalizing possession of marijuana, and some communities are going even further and are expunging the records of people arrested for possession. Four years ago, I talked about the need for comprehensive immigration reform. And it really sickens me. You know, people can disagree on this issue, on that issue. You have your views on healthcare, education, environment, whatever it may be. But that we have a president today who thinks he can get re-elected by dividing up the American people based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion or our gender. And right now at the top of his list in terms of demonizing people is undocumented immigrants. So today we stand with the undocumented, and we will bring about comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. We will provide legal status to the 1.8 million young people in the DACA program. And we will develop a humane border policy for those who seek asylum. America is not and must never be a country which snatches babies from the arms of their mothers. So let me conclude by saying this, and that is, our task is not going to be an easy task, but it is a necessary task because the future of American democracy rests on our shoulders. The future of the health of the planet rests on our shoulders. Our job, as I said earlier, is not just winning the Democratic primary, and we are going to win the Democratic primary. Our job is not just to defeat the worst president in American history, Donald Trump, and we're going to do that. And by the way, if you look at, polls are up and down, but if you look at almost all of the polling out there, we are pretty far ahead of Trump in all of the important states. But what I ask of you tonight is something that most candidates don't ask of you. Everybody wants your help to get elected, and I do. But I'm asking something very different, and in addition. And that is, if we are going to transform this country, if we in fact are going to successfully combat climate change, if we're going to pass Medicare for all, if we're going to lower prescription drug costs, if we're going to demand that the wealthiest people and largest corporations start paying their fair share of taxes, if we're going to do all of those things and more, we need millions of people involved in the political process in a way that we have never, ever seen. We need you all to go out and talk and do things that I know are not necessarily comfortable for you to do. But you got to do them. The times are perilous. And that means when you go up to your friends and somebody says, well, where were you on Tuesday night? Well, I was at a Bernie Sanders rally. You say, you went to a rally? What kind of bullshit is that? Why do you waste your time? All right? And you got a few friends who will say that, right? All right. You tell them that you are sick and tired of hearing them complain about the high cost of health care or their low wages or their student debt. Tell them to put up or shut up. And if each of you registers a few people, gets people to the polls, not only do we win, but that is the beginning of the revolution that transforms this country. So let me thank all of you for coming out tonight on this rainy, rainy night and to ask for your help in winning the primary, in winning the general election, and in transforming this country and creating an America that you and I know we can become. Thank you all very much.